They just want you to sit in your chair and go, hip hip hooray, for the Western press and the Western narrative, regurgitating the same old, same old, same old, every single day, without this. Please watch the first series, the first 2 episodes, the second series. Look at that.
Absolutely fascinating.
And it was the first time the Beatles had really stopped being semi-professional almost.
Hello everyone, Thunderbirds, and there they are. Mr. Thunderbirds himself. I was asleep. I couldn't believe it. I actually slept. Went to bed, thought I'd never sleep because of sleeping that morning, because I hadn't slept for about 50 hours. And well, anyway, here I am, and it's good morning. Films, TV, what have you been watching? I was going to watch something, a series, and I thought, shall I watch it? And then I watched it for about 20 minutes, and then I thought, no, it's full of woke. Forget what it was called. So I just didn't bother. When things like that, you just turn it off. And what the hell? What the hell? Why should I be watching this? Just for the sake of watching it. Some films are absolutely shocking. Really. Some of the films that I mentioned last week, I think, I was watching the latest Mission Impossible. Now, Mission Impossible, I like the franchise. I always thought that it was great, action, whatever. And I was watching the latest one, and I thought, this is shocking. So what's it about? Halfway through, I couldn't take any more. I thought it was awful. I think it's the final one in the franchise as well. Tom Cruise. Mary. Hiya, Mary. Hi, Frank and friends. Hiya. Oh, it's lovely. Lovely to hear, honestly. It really is. Smashing. And there's it. Hello, Mary. Glad you're here. Not glad you're here. Bear. Glad you're here. Lovely. Hey, husband. There's with Frank. That's Sam again. Yes. Yes. Husband. That's Sam again. Stingray as well, yeah. Captain Scarlet, yeah. They're all there. All our little superheroes. And imagine, we watched them. And we seen the strings and everything, but we still watched them. It's the only things that were on there, let's be honest. Mad. Freedom's here. Good morning, Frank and friends. Not nice. Yes, good morning, everyone. But you see, do you know the way, I've got to say this, I really have. Not like, look, look, this is about films and TV, but this just coincides with films and TV. Now, the new Snow White film was heavily criticised because of, you've got to say woke. You have to say woke. Snow White. And not only that, but it was criticised over a number of things. But one of the things that was criticised was by the acting of one of the actresses. And she was also criticised, this particular actress, for playing Wonder Woman, because she was bad in that as well. Now, Wonder Woman has an American accent, and she is American. Wonder Woman is an American girl, you know. Wonderful. Can leap. But anyway, she's a fully fledged American, and she fights evil, you know, for the goodness of America and the world, And what you've got is this girl who hasn't got an American accent. She was awful in it. She really was. She was awful. And then, for some reason, well, I know the reason. You'll get the reason in a moment. She was given, you know, one of those stars on that pavement in Hollywood. And she's done nothing really. You know, she's along there with the likes of Meryl Streep, Bette Davis, these unbelievable icons of the silver screen, including men, you know, including men. Incredible. And she was given one of these stars. You know, why don't you? So anyway, getting back to Snow White and why it was panned. And this girl, she blamed, you're not going to believe it, she actually blamed their faith. And she said that it was panned because of people supporting Muslims, Palestinians, and it was the Palestinians' fault. That it was, honestly, she said it was the Palestinians' fault that no one liked her. She blamed Palestinians. Know what I mean? And her name was Gado, whatever her name. And she was an ex-IDF soldier. She's an Israeli. And to blame the Palestinians for their awful performance in both, you know, she was awful in Wonder Woman, but she was terrible. You know, critics criticised her. Said that she was terrible. And the girl who played Snow White, she said free Palestine in a comment. You know, this is after the film, and she said free Palestine. She made a comment, you know, on X, so and she just done hashtag, you know, free Palestine. And to blame the Palestinians, this gal Gadot and their awful performances on Palestinians. And people, just ask, why is she getting a star in the Hall of Fame, as they call it? She's done nothing. And yet there's people being in the business for over 20 years, giving great performances, and in films still haven't got a star. I don't think Gene Hackman was on it. Someone of his ilk, Gene Hackman, didn't even get one. I think so. I'm not quite so sure. But you know why she's been given it to me. And I can't say it why. I can't, personally. But I think you've got an idea why she got the star on the pavement. I don't know. I don't know if there are, shall I say, people within the industry that favour certain people. The film industry, that is. Well, I know they do. I just know they do. You see it every year. Every single year. So what do you think? Why do you think Gal Gadot got a star in that Hall of Fame or whatever they call it? Why do you think she was panned? Because, as they said, the critics said she was just a bad actress. Or do you go along with Gadot by saying, just blame the Palestinians? How can you blame the Palestinians? How can you blame an outside population for a bad film, for bad reviews? It's just pathetic. Well, anyway, that's Gal Gadot. And as I said, I've been watching some films, and some of them have been, shall we say, not up to scratch. So I'd rather watch old films. I talk about propaganda on other shows, and propaganda is one of the worst things that, it hides the truth of everything. It really does. Propaganda hides the truth of everything. So you've got to smash down the propaganda until you come to the truth. But I like watching propaganda films, going back to the Second World War, because we needed them then. We were under terrible pressure during wartime, and I'm talking about a world war. So the propaganda films were great. Yeah, brilliant. And I enjoyed them. I enjoyed especially the early films, and the late films, to be honest, of Alfred Hitchcock. Fantastic. Great little mysteries, Great little mysteries. And someone asked me, when was it? Someone asked me the other week, what's the best science fiction film you've ever watched? No, it depends. There are science fiction films and science fiction films. Let's take, for example, War of the Worlds. Now, War of the Worlds is one of those films by a writer who was a visionary. He was a visionary. And you look at it and you go, wow, you know, could this happen? But could you imagine reading a book going back to the latter part of the 19th century? And you pick up H.G. Wells and you're reading this, and you say to yourself, this will never happen. This will never, ever happen. It's like I'm sorry about this. I don't know what's wrong. It's better. Anyway, it's, you know, you're reading this, say like you're reading a book in the 1890s, like Victorian time, and you're reading something like War of the Worlds. And you go, and you put that down, then you pick up another one, The Time Machine. So, oh, that'll never happen. That, you know, it's too far-fetched. That's what you'd be saying. Yet War of the Worlds, you know, you need to, oh, come on, not having this. And the likes of, as I said, The Time Machine, because in The Time Machine, you had planes bombing cities. What happened? What happened in the 20th century? He's writing about it in the 19th. And you have planes in the sky. No planes then when he was writing this, no such thing. You had balloons. Incredible. Incredible. Then you'll have the War of the Worlds. Beings from another planet coming to attack Earth. Now, this is written in the 19th century. You know, they talk about Nostradamus, everything on that. I'm talking years ago when I was a young man, I was reading about Nostradamus, and I couldn't make heads or tails of it. I think people were trying to interpret something what they wanted to interpret, rather than the interpretation of whatever he was writing, Nostradamus, and what he was saying. So you see, you have a 19th century novelist writing about these things here behind me. You also have other novelists who write about, you know, visionary things. George Orwell, 1984. Everybody's quoting today George Orwell. Oh, this is 1984, you know. This is what Orwell was saying. We're in the 21st century. And that was written in the 20th century. Think about it. Nearly 100 years ago, you know, he never wrote it in 1984, as some people think he's it. So you see how these people foresaw the future. Now let's get back to the science fiction. And as I said, someone asked me what was the best one I've seen. Well, there's so many science fiction ones that you go, wow. You go, wow, you know, yeah. Let's see what you have been saying. I'll tell you my favourite in the moment. Simon. Let's put my glasses on. Right, hey Franco, did you know Thunderbirds was named after the real airfield, Thunderbird Fields, where his elder brother had trained? No, I didn't. I didn't, Simon. Thank you for that. That's good, that. I never had a clue. Not a clue. Well, carries on. Captain Scarlet's voice and facial characteristics were, yeah, I didn't know that. I didn't know that. Cary Grant was a coward in real life. Coward. And as Captain Scarlet, he's the hero. The Tom Cruise War of the Worlds is good, was good. Yeah, there was a couple of, yeah, I liked it myself. I liked the machines, to be honest. But I like I tell you what, I like the 1953 with Gene Barry version. I thought that was very good. But the Tom Cruise one, you know, the special effects were absolutely superb. Spielberg, you see. Spielberg. Captain Scarlet has a darker and more serious tone compared to previous Anderson when that word, when I first seen that word years ago, super marionation, I thought, what the fuck was that? Anyway, it works. Reflecting a world plagued by paranoia and terrifying alien threat. The older was like that, you know, albeit that they were puppets. There's always a story behind it. There's always the villain. Remember that villain? And that villain was based on an actor. You've seen him in things. You just seen him in things. Never have a clue what his name is. The villain. Smashing villain. Do you ever remember? I was trying to think of an actor who was, and his name was Victor. And right after the show, it came to me, you know. Honestly, it did. And it was Victor Madden. Victor Madden. And he has one of those faces, you know, and it's just popped up in films. He wasn't a silent, like, you know, he did have lines and he did, you know what I mean? Well, Captain Scarlet says, Simon, Doctor Who fans would never have been treated to the novel The Indestructible Man, written by Simon Messing. Never heard of it. And I'm a great literature fan. Always have been, always will be. From Shakespeare right up. Honestly. Right up to David Niven. you know what I mean? And Peter Eustace. I've never heard of him, to be honest, Simon. Never heard of that, The Indestructible Man. Tell you what I have read. It was very good, The Last Man on Earth. But then again, you know, that was about a nuclear holocaust. The apocalypse is starting today. You've got to understand about writers and filmmakers, by the way. You really have to understand what inspires them. And I've always wondered what inspired H.G. Wells to write what he did write. You know, you can't just sit down and go, well, I think I'll write that. It's impossible. That's why I said he's a visionary. What inspired him? Did he see something? For example, War of the Worlds, did he actually see something? Because these ufologists, they say they're not just appearing now, like they did in 1947, I think, in America. Always seems to be in America. But nevertheless, when that pilot, I forget his name, you know, seeing these things zipping across the mountain range, and he was looking over at them. Was that? What are they in line? Then you had all these sightings. But you had pilots in the Second World War seeing strange phenomena in the sky, and they called them Foo Fighters. Foo Fighters. I always remember reading about people in Siberia. I forget where it was, you know, the exact location in Siberia. And I seen a documentary. And the documentary didn't half get to me because it went to this place in Siberia and no one can live around there now. And what it is, it's you see these vast area of trees falling like this. I like that. Falling. You know, as though it's, do you know when you see these hurricanes and you see actually filmed and you see the trees bend and then uprooting? Well, that's what these were, but they were dead. And every scientist said it was, you know, like today, I'm not talking going back then, it was like a nuclear attack. That's what a nuclear attack would do. And when they made it, you know, before they made the documentary, there was witnesses, well, I read about, and I'm going back, you know, and I'm talking about years ago. And they made statements. They actually made statements. These are Siberians. And they said, now this is in 1902. This is in 1902. And they seen things in the sky, zigzagging. And sending, like, say you've got two there, but they were sending out, you know, like beams of light at each other and they were zigzagging. And he said, there was a few of them, but there was these two. And one just came down. And that's what caused the devastation in this area. Now, they're witnesses from 1902, Siberian witnesses. And when I seen the documentary, it was great because you see the documentation in Russian, like, but you see it, and they interpreted what it said about these things. Now, you get the, again, the good old Americans. They were saying, no, it was a meteor that came down. But yes, I'm not talking about the skeptics. I'm not talking about skeptics. I'm talking about, remember Simon saying something about, I'm a skeptic. But anyway, I made a joke of it by saying septic. But we didn't take offense. But anyway, the skeptics were saying, no, they weren't skeptics, I'm sorry. They were saying that these people who were saying that it was a meteor, no, they're wrong. The way it was, if that was the way the devastation over the whole area, massive one, I forget how many square miles. It wasn't just like a few, like 20 square miles, a lot more. And they said, it would have made a tremendous hole in the ground, a meteor, if it would have landed. He said, no, this was like a nuclear, it was a fusion, he used terminology, that destroyed everything. He said, whatever came down, disintegrated, sending a wave, what did he say, like a hurricane, he said, and it just spread out. How powerful these things were in the sky, and one of them came down, crashed. So what did, and this was all after War of the Worlds, written by H.G. Think about it. Bella. Ciao Franco and chat up. You're all well. Hiya Bella. Hello, sweetheart. As we say, are you getting the UFO man on again? The UFO man is a nuisance. Oh, yeah, come on. Can I promote my book? I said, yes, no problem. Well, I never was Jason. I don't talk to these people. I don't take that the wrong way. I don't talk to these people. It's Jason who does it all. I just ask, for them. Because you ask. You ask, the people ask, hey, get someone. So Jason asked, and he's been coming up. I've had him on before, a couple of years ago, and he was good. He's showing us pictures. I remember he said, Jason was putting them on, great pictures, great. No AI, none of that nonsense. So anyway, he said to Jason, the first time, when we asked him this year, Jason said, he said, yeah, but I'm only showing 2 pictures because if I'm showing me pictures, they download them and they don't read, they don't buy me book. See, which is, okay, fine. He had some sort of logic, what he said. He said, no, come on, don't even show pictures, show a couple, like, to see who you are. And so he said, yeah, okay, I'll come on. Then you're supposed to come on a few weeks ago, something happened, which I do believe, actually. And then, was it last week, the week before, he was supposed to come on. And unfortunately, he didn't. So, but I get fed up with people like that saying that they'd come on. And they don't. Franco, just popping in to say, I'm going now, going to London. Oh, enjoy yourself, Billy. I don't like London. But enjoy yourself, Bella. Hope to see you soon. Hope to see you soon. Ci vediamo, as they say. My favourite science fiction movie is Clouds, Atlas, Saves Freedom. The author of the book is David Mitchell from South Ogilvy. I've never seen it. Never seen it, honestly. Yet I've heard about it. I've heard about it, Freedom. And Simon Anderson created the character Scott Tracy based on Lionel, his brother, killed in World War II. A German mine collapse in the 1950s and a rescue provided inspiration for the tech and rescue teams in Thunderbirds. Yeah. Obviously, I'm glad you said that, because to just make up something, it'll be very hard. So something has to inspire what you're going to write about, if you know me, meaning. And that's why I say about H.G. Wells. What inspired him to write War of the Worlds? The Time Machine. You've only got to look at, as well, Jules Verne. He was a great visionary too. You've only got to look as well at Mary Shelley. But what she was writing about was the danger of science. The danger of science. Think about it. Because when you look at the full title, Frankenstein, Prometheus Unbound. And we all know what Prometheus did when he stole the fire from the gods and gave it to man. So you see, that's why I've always loved literature, really. But I mean good literature. I like people who write about, social issues. And you have all the Victorian writers writing about social issues. No more so now. Dickens. Unbelievable writer. I love Shakespeare. Love him. I used to teach Shakespeare for the terrified. You know, people, once you mention Shakespeare, they go, oh, because they can't understand the language, if you know what I mean. And it's not, they just don't read it properly. I don't like, there are novelists I don't like. But I like a hell of a lot of others. I tell you who I couldn't stand, and I had to study it. Tennessee Williams, Streetcar Named Desire. I had to go and see that. You had these actors talking like that. They were English actors, by the way. Hey, darling. And that was it then. I said, I don't want to ever see another play. Cat on a hot tin roof. Fuck. Kill me. And that's one of the reasons why I never really pursued teaching at the time, literature. Then I went on to teaching besides history. Because there was more out there than Tennessee Williams. Then you've got the likes of, I don't like American literature. I really don't. I hated the likes of Huckleberry Finn, Tom Sawyer. Didn't like them. I don't know, something gets in your head, that's it. That's it with me, to be honest. I shouldn't be like that, but that I am. One of the greatest pieces to come out, but it was a play, but it was written, if you know what I mean, by Arthur Miller, and it was called The Crucible. The Crucible. And the crucible means a melting pot. And if you think about the melting pot, it's like Shakespeare's Humble Bubble, Toil and Trouble. The witches in the pot. You mix everything in to make evil. And you throw the humans then into this particular crucible. Brilliant, brilliant play. You are right, Frank. Anderson's work was inspired notably by H.G. Wells, whose novel The Food of the Gods was a direct inspiration for the Thunderbirds episode Attack of the Alligators. I don't remember that. I don't remember that, I'm being honest. I don't remember that. Right, I'll tell you my favourite, it has to be Extraterrestrial. Absolutely brilliant. Low budget film, brilliant effects. And what they did is what the Vicious Brothers, they did it all. And what they put in, they brought every science fiction thing into it, even the music. different types of music. They brought in the X-Files, they brought in Fire in the Sky, about that Walton fella who was kidnapped, abducted, he said. Travis Walton, do you believe him? Did you believe what happened to him? Because lots of skeptics said, oh, that never happens, I don't believe in this abduction. But why is people, like UAPs themselves, why did H.G. Wells write about them? He must have seen something. You just don't write about things in the sky. Do you? You don't. It's impossible. You might think, oh no, it's not impossible. You've only got to, even in art, you've only got to go back to Leonardo da Vinci. And da Vinci, a submarine. Think about it. Leonardo da Vinci. Drawing a submarine. He wanted to make a submarine. He wanted to make something on the surface of the water that could go down and see. And you could view out from beneath the surface of the water. That was Leonardo da Vinci. So you see, there's lots and lots of visionaries out there. Troy Tempest, the hero of Stingray, was based on actor James Garner. Really? His voice was provided by two actors, Tom Mason for speaking and Gary Miller for singing the theme song. I remember Gary Miller, Aquamarine, Aquamarine. Yeah, remember that. And we watched it. I think that got into the charts as well, that particular song. Because she's very demure, wasn't she? Aqua Marina. Is it? I always thought it was Maria. But anyway, it must be Marina. It's great when you can go back to you go back to your childhood. I go back to when I think I was a teenager. I don't know. Sitting there watching these mad things, puppets. But it was really good, it was very visionary actually, again. So Extraterrestrial was my favourite ever science fiction thing. Because everything was into it. And as I said, it was the technology was fantastic. And it was like them camera-held things, films. Like that Blair Witch thing when that first came out. Then they got a little trend in the Do you remember the Terrorhawks? Jeez, that Zelda scared me as a kid. Vincent Davis was Sergeant Major's here. I remember the Terrorhawks, but I don't think I must have watched one or two episodes, but I think I was growing out of them by then. But as I said, I've asked people to watch, and I'm talking about TV series. You know, like, I won't watch like series 1, 2, and 68 or all that. Waste of time. The only series that I've actually watched 1 and 2 was Tulsa, the Sliced Stallone. Brilliant, brilliant. And the best, I never watched the second series, but the first series of Your Honor with Bryan Cranston. And a fella named Michael Stuhlberg, I think his name is Stuhlberg, something like that, goes after. So that's, you know, a brilliant, highly recommended by me, you know, but that's just me. People mightn't like it. What kind of this thing? Never wear anything that's too big. But anyway, also Spotless. I don't think anyone's watched Spotless. It was a Netflix series, only a short series, Anglo-French. Fantastic. Brilliant. And I've seen a fella out of it. There's a fella out of Downton Abbey, a butler, one of the butlers, I think. I only watched a couple of Downton Abbey, not my type of thing. But anyway, nevertheless, it was. He's Irish, you know, he's an Irishman, this fella. He plays one of the best villains I've seen in Spotless. Fantastic. It's a great series, you know. It's only about 8 episodes or 10 at the most. And I watched it one morning. I got up like now. And I put the telly on and saying, what's this? What's this? Like I do with every series, I put it on, I go, you know, if it doesn't grab my attention in the first, I always give it 20 minutes. But this grabbed my attention in the first couple of minutes. And it was brilliant, and I watched it back to back. Spotless, no one's seen it. I've recommended it, no one's seen it. And the other one was The Outside with Jason Bateman. Fantastic. So you see, it's strange, you know. But as I said, you know, these things that happen to people, I never mentioned them last night, but I will one day. My 2 experiences in France made me think seriously, really. And I always remember I was in Germany, as you do. Shall I tell you about it? I was over in Germany, and you know the way, and there was this girl, Gerda, stunning she was, German girl, blonde, big blue eyes. I was a lot younger then, by the way. Anyway, I was just talking to her one day, and we went out, you know, a couple of times, and she took a shine, I took a shine, you know. And she said, "How would you like to come on a trip, like in a couple of weeks?" I said, "Where to?" And she mentioned this place. I said, "Yeah, all right. Yeah, no, yeah, okay, I'll go." So anyway, you know, then we got to know each other a bit better, if you know what I mean. And it was time to go, and it was on the I don't know whether it was on the Friday we went. Well, I know that we went overnight. You know what I mean? And we stayed at this place on this autobahn somewhere, Rustata. Stayed there. Like these, what the Americans call motels. And the next morning, gone to this place. And I walked out and I hitched home because what it was full of was, I couldn't believe it. Frightened me. Frightened me. Full of neo-Nazis, skinheads. Horrible. And the very first time I ever seen a tattoo on a head, and I'm going back years ago, you know. Years ago. I seen this fella, big tall James like that, skinhead. And right on the side of his head was a swastika. Tattoo. Tattoo. And what it was a big neo-Nazi rally. I said, "I can't stay here." She said, "Why?" I said, "No, got to go." So, and I seen this car going, and I ran over to the car. You know, I was going slow because I had to go get out somewhere. I said, "Can you give me a lift out?" She said, "Yeah, jump in." In German, like, you know, they can speak English. Anyway, we got up. And then I hitched this down this autobahn. He said, "Yeah, you get a lift." And I said, "I got an easy lift." And he got dropped off again. And I got a lift once in Germany again. I had to stay over there for reasons, work reasons. And coming home, it's freezing this night. Fucking snow on either side. And I was tumbling. And this Volkswagen van pulled up. And I went, sprachen Sie English? Mine, And it was an American. He said, "Yeah, jump in." "Hello, where do you go?" "No, going to mention this place called Tübingen." I said, "I'm going there." He says, "Yeah, we'll pass there." I said, "I'll buy you a cup of coffee at the Richtafter on the way down." He said, "Okay." So it was about, I think it was 2 hours, 3 hour journey. And he was smashing fella. He said, "Do you want a beer?" He said, "There's a beer in there." I said, "No, thanks." In the fridge, it's fucking freezing. And this fella, this American, long hair. Well, I had long hair myself, but long hair and a big beard. And I said, "What do you do?" He says, "I'm in the USAF." I said, "What's that?" Because when he said that, you never think of it like, the Air Force. You just think he's a worker because of his long hair and his beard. Am I boring you? Let me know if I'm boring you, So anyway, he said, no, he said, I'm in the USA. He said, I'm undercover. Getting labels, bringing them home. You know, soldiers were out. And he told me, I mentioned something. And he said, we have them. We have them in an area that's, he never used the word secret, he just said that's out of bounds to the public, to the media, to everything. A few years later, it all came about that it was Area 51. What he said to me. And Simon says, the thoughts on Tom Baker, he was brought up around the school. Yeah, he was a Scotia, was Tom. Around my area, Scotland Road. I never knew he was a writer. Midwest UFOs and Beyond, a book about his experience and belief regarding the extraterrestrial beings and UFOs. You want to try and read another actor, which I have read about, seen documentaries on him, and that's Dan Aykroyd. Same as Tom. He was the best ever Doctor Who, by the way. Tom Baker. Have you seen him now? I've seen a recent picture of him. Fucking hell. Unrecognisable. As Tom. I was never a great Doctor Who fan, but my favourite, John Pertwee, I found him very underrated actor. No, John Pertwee was very good. He was a very good Doctor Who. But as I just said, Baker was far better than every one of them. During World War II, Pertwee served in British intelligence working alongside Ian Fleming. You see, I think that's a great comment, and I'll tell you for why, Simon. People who worked in intelligence and in the war wanted to get rid of all that war thing. They just wanted to get, so, you know, they went into a different realm of whatever, and they went into acting. I'll tell you another, which Christopher Lee. He was in intelligence. Very clever man. And he worked behind enemy lines. Christopher Lee. Wouldn't think that, would you? Christopher Lee. And I interviewed a fella who worked alongside Ian Fleming. Me. Interviewed this particular person. And I said about James Bond to him. This fella, incidentally, he joined the army at the outbreak of war, right? And he was at Dunkirk. He said, oh, fuck this. So an officer, hey, hi, hello. Hello. You know, one of them type of people. Lovely man, though. And he resigned his commission. You know, we couldn't do that, you know, being sappers. you know, you're staying in the army, that's the end of it. Anyway, he he resigned his commission, and he says, I think the Air Force would be more, but he had to go up and fly, and he's shot down in the drinking there in the English Channel. And he said, oh, fuck this. Oh, wait. I'm gone. So he resigns his commission. Then he went into the Navy. He said, I'll be all right. Those torpedoes. He said, I can't live. I'm like a cat. I've got 9 lives, but I'm not taking another chance. And he joined the intelligence. And that's how we got to meet the likes of Fleming. And I said about James Bond, he said there was a fellow in intelligence. And when I was looking at Christopher Lee, I thought of him right away. I thought of him. You know, when I was watching this about Christopher Lee, and then I thought right back to that interview with this particular gentleman and what he said about James Bond. He said it was based on a fellow who he actually went to Berlin, perfect German accent. He was in Italy, perfect Italian accent. Could speak several languages fluent, including Russian. And when I just thought then of it, Bond, a character, you know, based on, you know, inspired, but James Bond's by Ian Fleming was inspired about a fellow who's there. And when I was watching about Christopher Lee, I went, fucking James Bond, he was in intelligence. Behind enemy lines. Think about it. You try to, you always try to connect the dots. I'm sorry, Simon. I was thinking the same. Pertwee was offered the main role as Captain Monaghan in Dad's Army, but opted out to turn the role down. Lately in life, he was famous for the lead character, Wurzel Gummidge. Yeah. You see, Simon, who was better than Arthur Lowe as Captain Monaghan? Fantastic. The character was perfect. So I'm glad John Pertwee diffused it. Christopher. Hi, Frank, and everyone. Like and subscribe. Thank you, Christopher. Still got them books for you here. There. Freedom. The music of Doctor Who was very ahead of its time, using electronic. Yeah, it was. When you think about it, yeah, well, yeah. Good one, that Freedom. Did I go wrong then? Yeah, I think that's it. So, fascinating guy, really. Age 17, he ran away from his home to join the Finnish army to fight the Soviets. A year later, he was out to fight the Nazis. He tried to join the army, but was denied him. He became an intelligence officer. I know that. See, Simon. I read about him. I really did. And don't forget, I interviewed that gentleman. I love Doctor Who. It's a British institution, sadly now owned by USA Disney, I think. Well, they own North Sea oil, don't they? So they own everything. They own everything. The Americans. They fucking own Europe. That's why they destabilized the Middle East. To destabilize Europe. And they succeeded. Or what you're not hearing of, you might be hearing snippets about Germany and their industry going over to America. Because Germany, when you had Schultz, and now you've got this fucking idiot named Merz, Chancellor, just destroying Germany. Especially with the North Sea pipeline being blown up. And the Italians have said they've got someone, a Ukrainian, who blew it up. So what are you going to fucking do? A Ukrainian. So how does America fit in here? Remember Biden when he said, oh, we've got means, to stop the pipeline. Remember that? We've got means. When Biden said, I'm going to stop, the energy coming from Russia into Europe. And a female journalist said, well, how are you going to do? And he was just about to leave, the press conference in the White House. And he said, we have means. The next blown up, and that's Sikorsky, that Polish fellow, minister, who's married to a Yank. And he said, the first tweet to go up was, thank you, USA. And you just see it, bubble in the water. The gas. Thank you, USA. And the second tweet was from Liz Truss. She said, it's done. So the West blew it up. And nothing has changed economically for the big nuclear superpower. Russia. Nothing. They've done everything. Sanctions. Ridiculous. Christopher says, Doctor Who is now a reality. You have to build a time machine to get a doctor appointment. I like that. I never knew Christopher Lee's family tree was to nobility. You're Italian. Listen, I know all about him. You don't have to tell me. Right? Simon. Know all about him. Estelle Marie was a countess, and Yes, in the Cardini family roots going back to the infamous Borgias. Wow. Yes. Know all about it. Once I found out about that, but I've known about it for years. And if I tell you something, you go, you might believe it, but I'm not bothered if you don't, honestly. But one of my family members was friends with one of his cousins. And he was saying, talking about Christopher Lee. That's how I got into what he did and everything during the war in the Apennines. Partisans. Christopher Lee. Yes. Also, Lee was the only member of the Lord of the Rings cast to have met Arthur Tolkien, which he considered a highlight of his life. You've got these, Lords of the Rings, incredible. Incredible. I thought Harry Potter was brilliant as well. But Lords of the Rings, first time I ever seen it on film, Lords of the Rings. And it was brilliant. And I'm going back years ago. I was just sitting there. So this is before remote controls, but I checked it over. And when you had to go over to the telly and go click, to put another channel. And the first time I ever seen Lords of the Rings was animation, cartoon. It was brilliant. I can still vision it now. It was absolutely English, British. Fantastic. It was made up when it came out on film, as you mentioned there, Simon Christopher Lee. Beautiful. Beautiful. Great franchise. Great people. Alan Rickman. Maggie Smith. Jane Maggie. The King. Hiya, Frank. And my sister's looking after it. 2 dogs. Well, I'm exhausted. I hope we win one day and get these sack hands gay over the line. Yeah, we will. It's up with worrying King. Did you notice what he said there? My sister's looking after 2 dogs while she's on holiday, and I'm exhausted. That's taking them out for a walk. And the way it's going today, I think our brothers, if you call them that, saying it's against their religion and they don't want anyone walking dogs. It's against their beliefs. So that legislation might come in, so you might have to walk around the back garden or something, or around the house with them next time they're on, your sister goes on holiday. King, honestly, fucking going ways. Lee also witnessed history in while in Paris he found himself attending the execution of the serial killer Eugene Weidemann by guillotine. It was the last public. That's on film, that actually. You see that? Seen that? To see him, being brought out, being placed on the tape like that. Not like that. Not like that. Down. Face down. On the board. And then they lift the boards up, just shove it along. That thing comes down and he had a white shirt on. And funny enough, see the way this is? The shirt's like that, you know, down. It's not protruding above the neck. I tell you who else was guillotined in Germany. One of my great heroines, Sophie Shaw, the White Rose. The White Rose, Sophie Shaw. One of the greatest stories ever. German. Young 21-year-old, I think she was 20, 21. Student. Great actor, Christopher Lee. His voice was chilling. It was, King. It was. I always, you know, the likes of him and Vincent Price. You know, their voices. But yet I've got Morgan Freeman as well. But I think Morgan Freeman, I don't know, he's got the voice, hasn't he? I don't think he's much of an actor, but he's got the voice. Great. And Simon. About his time in the SOE, he said, I've seen many men die in front of me, so many, in fact, that I've become almost hardened to it, having seen the worst that human beings can do to each other. Yes. Oh, Ali, hiya, mate. Hello, Frank, where have you been? Where have you been? Good to see you. Thank you for popping in to say hello. Thank you so much. Ali Danus, our Romanian friend. And Christopher, I watched the Lord of the Rings cartoon and I think they ran out. That's it. That's the one, because they only made one. For the third film, I have full audio book on my iPhone. It's fantastic, says Christopher. So that's the same one. I said years ago, was it the 70s? Yeah. It was great, wasn't it? Excuse me. As I said, I had to sleep. Couldn't believe I had to sleep. Supposed to go out today, I can't go. Yeah, you're right, Frank. Alec Guinness. Oh, love Guinness. Excuse me. Hello? Hello? It is. It's from the Grange. Oh, yeah. I'm sorry, go on. Oh, okay. Oh, that's smashing. Yeah, I'll be next week, I'm afraid. So, that's great. Thank you so much. Have a good weekend, by the way. Nice. Bye-bye. No, that's got nothing to do with me. I bought my daughter the car and they left something out of it. And they ring me. I don't know why they ring me. To say that it's there, you know, go and pick it up. Yeah, you're right, Frank. I like Guinness. I love Guinness. Smiley. Remember him playing Smiley, Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy. One of the greatest actors ever was Guinness. Could play anything. From a young man playing comedy and right up to what was it? A Bridge of the River Kwai. Couldn't quite think of it. Brilliant. And do you know who he was mates with? And he warned him. He said, don't go out. And he took no notice. He said, oh, but. And he went out and was killed. And that was Jimmy Dean. And how we met, he went to this restaurant. He just got to America, so he, Hollywood. He goes out for the meal. And he gets to this restaurant, and this fellow said, oh, you can't come in. And James Dean was sitting like, over. He's looking at this fellow who couldn't get in. And he walked over. And he went, he's a friend of mine. Oh, okay, Mr. Dean, okay. Okay, Mr. Dean. Come in. And he said, yeah, sit with me. And he had a meal, and they became friends. Guinness and him. And he warns him on the day. He said, do you want to come? I said, no. And he said, don't go in it today. Do not go in that car today. And he went in, and he was killed. James Dean. Jimmy Dean. And that was it. That was it. It just shows you, doesn't it, some of the things that. But it's all been related, hasn't it, really, to films and TV. And no one has seen my recommendations. No one. Not one of you. And it's sad. I go out of my way to say, watch Spotless. No one watched it. Well, I haven't seen anyone on here who says, I watched that film. I said The Outsider, Jason Bateman. No one has seen that. I've never seen anyone who said, yeah, I've seen a film. I think Your Honour's been seen now. But I recommend it. Maybe you don't like TV series. I don't like them myself, to be honest. I was watching something called The Better Sister, and it looked good. It looked good. And then I said, series one. Do you know what I found the other day? Found this. I was rooting for something as you did. Do you ever remember the song at all? There it is. There. And it's signed by the fellow who made it up, did the song. And the fellow who backed me. That backed me to, you know, the backing music. That is. I thought, wow, I thought never surprising when you're looking for something and all of a sudden you come across something that you thought you'd never see again. That's the beauty. And I've been looking for something else as well, and I can't find it. And it's a shame. I'm doing a watch along on Monday. The Reds. Anyway, I'm going to go now because you're all leaving me. And I won't be seeing you on. Yeah, I'll be seeing you Monday. I'm having no shows though. I'm not having the history show. I'll be having the history show on Tuesday. And the history of literature on Wednesday. And really, I was contemplating not doing anymore, you know. I know it's sad because anymore, because I'm not saying that it's hard for me, you know, whatever, doing these things. But with the football, you know, people just watch football. They'd rather watch, and football is on more or less every night. Every single weekend. I don't do nothing at the weekends. I only do this of a morning. And of a, you know, weekday. And I like doing my history show. That's what I am. I love doing the history of literature because it's very important. I was just talking about it before. That's how important history is. Literature, that is. The history of literature. And how it's prevalent to today and what's happening. Have a great weekend, Frank, and everyone up the title winning Reds. It's Christopher. I love this lady, you know, Myra, South African, all the way from South Africa, and she knows what I was talking about before. You know, about Ukraine, what's happening. Simon says, Frank, the history shows are good. Yeah, but it's like, look, when I do the history, I bring in different aspects. When I was asked to do some local stuff, I'm going back years ago. So I had to study all over again because I thought I knew a lot about Liverpool and I knew nothing. I couldn't believe it. Because I was just asked to do. A friend of mine, he said, do us a favour, Frank, can you come down? And he said, I'm having an open, a lunchtime day, you know, I'm opening a thing that night, you know, in the night for adults. I said, okay, yeah, you know, education for adults. So I said, yeah, okay. I went down, as I moved around, you know, eating these vol au vents and whatever. And met Lord Liverpool. Hello. So, hello. How are you? Oh, yes, I'm fine, thank you. How are you? I'm all right. Yeah, good. And then when they all went, I was sitting in the office with him. Great fella, this fella, George. Georgie, I've known him years, lived in our community, his family. They're great parents, lovely people. And brothers as well, lovely fellas. The next, he said, if the phone went, oh, and it was the tutor that night who was to come in and said, do you know anything about history to me? I said, why? He said, this woman's just said, oh, I'm not going into the inner city. Now, this is where I lived around here and where I grew up. And she said, oh, I'm not going in there because, my car might be stolen. Because it was a night class, 7 o'clock. And he said, I said, he said, what do you know? He said, you know about Liverpool, you're at a store. I said, I know nothing. I said, the only thing I know, really, is about the couple of VCs, the First World War. I said, that's all I know. He said, we'll talk about them. Come in, please. So I went in. Now, I said, the people loved it. It was a big class. It surprised me. Because I used to just give tutorials, as a lecturer about the Romans to a class of no more than 12. She loads of in here that night. And it spoke about the VCs. And it was incredible that these people, So I said, okay, thanks for joining me tonight, but next week I'll have a new tutor. So anyway, little did I know, during that week, that was on the Monday, George phoned me up, his friends, and he said, Frank, come in. The people loved you. I said, no. I said, I know nothing. So I said, okay. So I had to go to the library. I had to do a bit of research about some history. So I got hold of a load of characters. So I went in and did a load of characters. And it was from there, then all of a sudden, there was lots of urban legends about Liverpool. There was lots of myths about Liverpool. And I'm talking lots. And I went, but one thing I didn't know about, and it was when I was doing my PhD, when my professor said to me, I was doing something on 20-year social and economic issues, Shakespeare time, right? 20 years. And I looked forward on a 20-year period of Charles Dickens, the social and economic issues. That's what it was. So I did those two combined for my thesis. And the professor said, do something on the maritime history of Liverpool. I said, no. He said, no, do it. I said, well, what kind of theme will I do? What subject matter? And he said, do the slave. I said, what? Slave trade? Don't behave doing that. I said, what can I talk about the slave trade being, we all know that he was down at the pier head. And he just looked at me and he went, do it. Never forget it. And as you mentioned before, Simon, about expressions on the faces and who they were copied for, for this lot here. And I just looked, and you just do it. Because that's one of the greatest myths of Liverpool, the slave trade. And I'm talking fucking great myths. I've learned a lot from them, and I know you're not too keen on the Beatles. No, I don't mind the Beatles being mentioned. The Beatles are the greatest. I've seen them live as a 14-year-old. A lot, but the music scene would not be what it is today without Epstein and the influence of the Beatles. Yeah, totally agree with you. I used to have a fella that you wouldn't have known that before you joined it, and he will be coming on again. And Derek Shelmerdine, incredible. What he doesn't know about the Beatles. I was asked by a fella who owns the taxis, forget his name. He said, you know, would you go in and bring these tourists around? And I said, no. He said, why? You know, the Beatles saw. I said, no. I said, there are people out there who know more about the Beatles than I do. He said, no, I said, I'm telling you now. These people know what kind of clothes they wore on a Tuesday afternoon. They're incredible. But anyway, I didn't do it. Didn't want to do it, to be honest. But yeah, I love the Beatles. My granddaughter, 13, her mother's taking her today to the start of the Beatle week. And I'm supposed to go with them. I can't go. I wish I could. To be honest, for your history shows, I love doing some reading before the shows. I've learned so much about the history and importance of this city and its link with literature. Oh, thank you. You see, I like talking about characters, and you mentioned literature there, and you've got Nicholas Montserrat and the Cruel Sea. You'll have a great photographer, he's Chambray Ardman. And our council, wonderful council, the great council, as you all know, wanted to give, believe it or not, all the works, everything of East Chambray Ardman to Bradford. Bradford? What are you doing? Anyway, it's a museum now on Rodney Street. Rodney Street's so full of history, it's incredible. The people who lived there, unbelievable people. Sarah Biffin, one of the greatest artists, miniature. Sarah Biffin. Born, she had no arms, no legs, and yet she was a great miniature artist. Think about that. I have learned so much from these shows. And do you know something, Frank? Do you know what makes the show apart from the people here is your passion? God, I wish I had you as a lecturer. You are, funny enough, through this, the people who came to see me the other day, they said, I showed them something. And it's what the BBC, they actually filmed me doing some lecture in St. George's Hall. Only a, short thing. And they asked these people, 2 people, about me, who was going to the lecture. And one of them said exactly what you've just said there. And I didn't know these people. One was, this fellow who said that was a man. And the other one was like a younger girl, It was lovely. They said. And I'm like a sponge with things that I get my teeth into. Honestly, you inspire. I'd love if you got a Tom Slemon in one night. I used to love listening to him on a Sunday once a month on Radio City. Yeah, I know Tom, believe it or not. But I've lost all contact. I've lost contact. Look, the ex-partner, she just changed, genuineness. Unbeknown to me, she changed, the email addresses and everything. She went over to fucking lost everything. All my emails, everything. And I had a new email. I lost all contacts there. Another time, and it was only recently, on Facebook, someone hacked me. And they were going around, this hacker was asking people for money. Me asking for money, never asked for a penny in my fucking life. Of anybody. And these people were saying, do you want to make like so much? You send me £600, in 2 weeks you'll have £6,000 and all this. No, I didn't know this, obviously. I was just doing whatever. And I hardly go on Facebook anymore. Very rarely. And even then. So I got banned. And you tried to, I said, what am I banned? And they said, it's not me, I must have been hacked. I said, I don't ask for anything. I said, you only got to go through my record. I don't take any blind bit of notice. They wouldn't let me back on. So I had to go back with it. Well, I didn't. I said, Jason did. And that's the name I go under today on Facebook. But I've done nothing. And I lost a lot of contacts there. Good people. And I will not, there are some people who friend request. And these are the hackers. Some of them are the hackers. Because you've already got like a friend. Say like you came up, Simon, or Christopher, or anybody, or anyone, even Myra, whatever, saying friend request. Sometimes you click it and it's a hacker. And that's how I got collared. Lost a lot of contacts. So I'm very, reluctant to add people on Facebook. Just in case they're hackers. I love Liverpool. I always have, but I have learned more from you on Monday history than ever. Thank you. Thank you. So please, Franco, don't stop the history shows. We'll see what the guys on the podcast think before making a decision. Honestly, the brilliance of what you. Thank you. No, I really appreciate that. And you see, as I said, there's lots and lots of people. They're watching games now. I'm going, and it's sad. But I love as I said, that's what I am. I'm a historian. And I used to teach literature. Because I love me literature. I've always loved literature ever since I was a little boy. I've always read. Do you know what I used to read? Loved it. Billy Bunter. Billy Bunter. And Simon. Anyway, I'll let you go. I'll let you get on, Franco. Thanks for today. I think I might have Tom's email address. I can drop you an email if you want. wanted to make anyway. I'm glad I found your pod. Thanks. If you do that, you'd have to drop it. We're in the description. It's FC, all one word. This, by the way, if you're there, Simon. It's fcliverpoolpod@gmail.com. That's FC, all one word. fcliverpoolpod@gmail.com. So I don't know whether they're all caps, if you know what I mean, like caps, because that's what's on the thing there. I was with Jason, so I said, I don't want to know the email. He says, it's on the bottom of your monitor. I said, I always wondered what that was for. So anyway, that's it. If you do like caps, try and get through, that's smashing. If not, you'll have to work it out yourself. But that's the email address if you drop it off. Thank you. Well, get hold of Christopher. He's got my details to get directly, to me. And on that wonderful note, thank you. I shall see you. I'm doing a podcast, as I said, on Monday. On Tuesday, I'm doing history, funny enough, Tuesday night. And I'll be doing the history of literature on Wednesday night, along with Anthony. Great Anthony. See, Anthony and myself, I love art. I love the arts. I really do. Anthony also loves the arts. And we've got a great passion for different things, things that we connect with. You know what I mean? Even music. I grew up in a household with classical music. That's why I love the opera. That's why I love my classical music. Thumbs up. Alan, great again, Frankie. Why didn't you just say hello? Hey, Alan. Just a little hello. We would have all said, thank you. And that's what it is. A lot of people tune in. I had, how many? Jason says 600 or so, only last week. 600 on one show. And I only had like a few likes. Work that out. And that's annoying. Do you know what I want to do one night? This. Shown you this before. Why they sank here. Why they sank here. Think about it. Think about it. And on that note, and Alan says, sorry, hello mate, big fan, enjoy all the shows you do. Just say hello to us. I don't know that you're there, and neither do the rest of the gang, these are great people. They're lovely, heartwarming people. And, this chat, really, they're so genuine. They're so genuine. It's like Simon one day, I was doing a football show, and he disagreed with some of them. What was even me, he disagrees with me, and that was okay. That's fine. But we've got great respect for each other. And don't forget, life's about opinions. Life's about opinions. And when I do my, we had the lovely Myler on here, and Myler and I met, and it was just, I watched the alternative news rather than the Western media news. And so does Myra, and she's in South Africa. So anyway, went on some podcast, where we were getting the truth, what was really happening, instead of all the propaganda, spin and lies and everything else that was coming out of the West. And it was just like on here, saying hello to one another. And that's how, that's how you meet people. Honestly, it's how you meet people. And people who have got the same ideas, rather than, listening to all this nonsense. Say, for example, about Ukraine, the most corrupt country on the planet, and the most corrupt defunct leader. That's why Putin won't sign anything with him, because he'll be gone, he's gonna go. The people want to get rid of him. The Ukrainian people, they're fed up with him. They're fed up with his corruption as well. And that's Zelensky. But you don't hear that, everybody, thinks he's great. He's not great. He's a fraud. He's a corrupt fraud. He's a puppet to the Americans. So you see, that's the way I look at it. And he's left now, even the Ukrainian people, press, have actually come out and done and said 1.7 million soldiers have died, Ukrainian soldiers. Whereas a few weeks ago, Zelensky was saying, we've lost 40,000. Been telling lies, he's been sending them to the front. He's been dragging young people off the streets and old people, old fellas with hair like mine, and putting them in the front, putting them in uniform, putting them in the front for certain death. That's how bad it is in Ukraine. And it's a big washing machine simply because America is making a lot of money with the washing machine. It's being laundered right before our eyes, like what's going on in Gaza, right before our eyes, and nobody does that. Nobody. Alan. And it's so sad. It's so sad. I thought I just seen something there. And one day, I'm going to torture you all by playing this. See me light? Hey, see me light there? See that light there? Now you might think, wow, look at that. That's my halo. So you see, Liverpool looks I'm leaving you behind. Anyway, on that mad note, hopefully, I hope I didn't bore you today. You know, about my little stories. It was about even the neo-Nazis over in Germany. Frightening, that. Honestly, frightening. Oh, Rally, yeah, I know. Here's one, Alan. Look, you know, this lad from Romania. Now, Romania, he should have had a leader in today named Georgescu. Georgescu. And the EU said, oh, we can't have him. The EU stopped him from being, this is Brussels, by the way, this is von der Leyen, this is how corrupt they are against Russia or whatever. And they stopped him from being, the people wanted him. He had a vast majority, the likes of Ali News, voting for this man. And they wouldn't allow him. The EU, Brussels, simply because Georgescu said, I'm not interested in Ukraine, I'm interested in my people, the likes of Ali News. So he couldn't be Prime Minister, the President. And then when he tried to go again, they arrested him and banned him. And it's wrong. But you've got to blame America for all this, believe it or not. America put pressure on. And then what you've got is a fellow named Simeone, the same, you know, like Georgescu, wanted to look after the people rather than Ukraine. Said, "Come on, what have they done to us? Well, why should we look after them? I want to look after my own people." And he was so far ahead in the polls after the first round. It was impossible for him to get beat. It was impossible. Yet he got beat. See the corruption? If there's a money. It's shocking what's going on. And as he says, I'm at home, trying to move out, nothing new, waiting to see what happens with this war. You see what I mean? It's shocking what's going on in this world. You've got Maduro of Venezuela with a big bounty on his head for the Americans because the Americans want the oil. The Venezuelan oil, they've got more oil than Saudi Arabia and they just want it. So they said to the leader, well, they never said to him, it was the CIA and Trump put a $50 million bounty on his head, $50 million bounty on his head. This is a legal, democratically elected leader of Venezuela, but they want him out, just like what they do with all these covert operations and regime changes in America. It's shocking what's going on in the world with these Americans. Shocking. Because they want everyone's resources. And as Christopher says, hope everything goes okay for you, Ollie. See, we care about people. There's a lad named the Scottish Bear, Alan. He went in for a serious operation. We were all praying for him. This is no evangelical pod, by the way, you know, but we do feel for each other. We're all brothers and sisters here. Great people, lovely people. CW. Afternoon, Frank and Chap. Behave, where have you been? You've been rolling around, haven't you, during the garden before you came in and have your breakfast and sat down and said, I'll think I'll put Frank on there. Frank's leaving in a minute. You're right, says world we live in, Alan. I think I mentioned before, I don't know whether I mentioned it or not. When I was growing up, like the 50s, believe it or not, albeit that the Korean War was going on, the Suez crisis and everything, the 50s, as a little mad kid, you know, me growing up, to me, they were lovely times as a kid. Kids today. Even my own granddaughter, Sophia, she knows about Ukraine. I don't talk to her about it. But she knows that there's a war going on. She knows that people are dying. I knew that people were dying. I always remember I went into the bathroom when the Korean War was going on. This is true, this. And I turned on the tap. And I left the tap running to get something. And my grandmother said to me, never leave the tap running because the soldiers in Korea, she just said, soldiers in Korea who are very thirsty and can't drink the water until they're given some. Never forget that. And I never waste water, you know, ever since then. And that was as a child, you know. But it was the greatest, it was the most, what do they say, serene decade ever. Albeit it was like the Suez crisis, as I said, and the Korean War going on. Mad. And ever since, you know, wars everywhere. All Americans. American starts wars, can't finish them. They've never won a war, did you know that? Never won a war. I wish some others had made me laugh then. That CW, he makes me laugh. Anyway, thank you, people. Thank you so much for joining me down this Saturday morning with tons of birds. I meant to mention this little fella here. Where is he? Here, him. And he's based on one of these little character actors that you don't know the name of. And he was always in prominence in the 50s and the 60s, this fella. Hello, Mr. Hello, Mr. Tracy. Yes, my lady. Yes, my lady Penelope. And you have seen this little mad fella with his little mad face. But anyway, on that little note, thank you. Hope to see some of you on Monday. Have a great weekend. Enjoy yourselves. Let's hope it keeps dry for all our Beatle fans. Mille grazie. Ciao. Ci vediamo.